Imagine, just for a second, standing in the middle of your city, your home, and watching the very fabric of your reality meticulously unstitched right before your eyes. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping into a somber, deeply unsettling historical account, and we're going to experience this entire event through the burdened eyes of a single mortal witness, a man named Ilyan Marr. Now, when we think of a country being destroyed, we usually think of the traditional ravages of war, right? Conquering armies, burning cities, crumbling walls. But there are no armies here, no fire. Instead, what we're looking at is a systemic, metaphysical erasure. It's not a destruction. Actually, scratch that. It's an unmaking, a total unmaking. And as Ilyan stands right at the center of this unfolding tragedy, we are going to follow his every observation to see how a nation is truly, completely unmade at noon. A nation is a belief shared by the living. I will answer by removing the belief. Just sit with that for a moment. Ilyan Marr was physically in the room when the demon-crowned Belial delivered this terrifying decree. And honestly, the sheer metaphysical chill of those words is what anchors this entire historical account. Belial's introducing a concept here that is just profoundly terrifying. He didn't come to the nation of Ervath to kill its people. That would be too simple. He came to execute the very idea of Ervath. Think about it. What holds a society together? It's that shared belief. It's the invisible contract between citizens. By targeting that exact belief, Belial initiates a collapse that is it's infinitely more terrifying than any physical siege could ever be. Because he's not taking their lives, he's taking the meaning of their lives. So how does something like this even happen? Well, to understand it, we really have to look at the massive contrast between profound human arrogance and deeply informed terror. See, Ilyan arrived in the capital 3 days before the disaster, and he wasn't just a normal traveler. He was heavily burdened by demonic gifts. He had a memory granted to him by the demon Vassago, a lawful sight given by Andromalius, and this absolutely chilling ability to literally hear when a lie had grown teeth. Because of these incredibly rare gifts, Ilyan knew exactly what was coming. He knew the entity approaching was a high crown. But on the other side of the room, you have Chancellor Morag Vale and his ruling council. These are men who trusted ink and ledgers way more than they trusted omens. Up until now, they had only ever dealt with minor, low-ranking demons. So in their profound hubris, they arrogantly assumed they could just treat the abyss as, well, hired power. They were completely, dangerously blind to the vast, terrifying hierarchy of the unseen world. And that brings us to the specific moment it all starts. Belial enters the capital right at dawn. He doesn't look like a monster. He appears just as a plain, somewhat handsome traveler. But the absolute second he steps through the city's legendary bronze gate, the gate itself begins to fail. Ilyan watches this happen. The historical weight, the conceptual meaning of this massive monument, it instantly drains away into nothing. The arrogant human officials completely underestimate Belial because, hey, he didn't bring a fiery army with him. But the natural world, the lesser supernatural world, they recognize his true crown immediately. It's an instinctive reaction. The human guards suddenly feel this freezing chill, and they actually remember an order that was never even given to them, and they just step aside. The street dogs immediately lower their heads in total submission. The birds on the rooftops go dead silent. And the minor demons, the exact spirits the human council thought made them so powerful, they literally abandon their human host and flee into the cracks and drains in sheer, unadulterated terror. The entire environment is bowing down to a king that the humans absolutely refuse to see. This leads us right inside the High Civic Hall. Ilyan is standing there watching in just mounting, helpless dread as the fatal mistake is made. The human council receives Belial in this massive, grand chamber built specifically to impress people. Yet purposefully, they place Belial physically lower than themselves. They put him right in the spot where they stand accused criminals and low-ranking envoys. And then they read him a contract. A contract offering him a meager ration of fear and some little shrine, all in exchange for his obedience and protection. And then Chancellor Morrick Vale leans forward, and he seals the doom of his entire nation by saying, out loud, "Whatever small throne you pretend to hold, know this: in our world, you are hired power." It is just a staggering, unbelievable display of political arrogance. They completely mistake Belial's quiet majesty for weakness. They are looking at a high demon, an ancient crown, and treating him like a lowly servant they can just put on a payroll.
Now, the reaction to this massive insult is instantaneous. But here's the crazy part. It's completely invisible to almost everyone in that room, except for Ilyan. Because of his gifted hearing, Ilyan experiences the pure sensory horror of the unseen world absolutely panicking. Deep in the walls of the hall, the hidden lesser demons begin to scream. Ilyan suddenly remembers a lesson he learned from the demon Vassago. Every single rank in the abyss has a specific sound it makes when offended. Low ranks hiss, mid ranks crack. But higher crowns become quiet. And in that moment, Belial becomes completely, terrifyingly quiet. That screaming Ilyan hears from the walls isn't just random noise. It is the visceral, desperate sound of lower ranks realizing their absolute insignificance compared to the sheer terror of an offended crown. And all the while, the human officials are just sitting there, completely oblivious to the doom they've just invited.
So the crucial point here is that this erasure, it doesn't begin with a giant blast of fire from the sky. It begins with the crumbling of meaning itself. Belial calmly tells the council that they have mistaken his face for his measure. He states very matter-of-factly that by sunset there will literally be no nation left to even claim their offense. And the very first sign of this doom happens right behind the council members. The massive gold emblem of the national seal just cracks right down the center. But it's not just a physical crack, its meaning cracks. The officials turn around and stare at the symbol, a lion holding a river branch, and suddenly they can't remember why the lion is holding it. The history is just gone. Their own deeply cherished foundational symbols instantly become these foreign, incomprehensible artifacts. The amnesia has begun. What follows is what we can call the architecture of erasure. It happens in stages. At the first hour, names fail. By the fourth hour, the maps reject the kingdom. At the sixth hour, lesser thrones break their promises. And by the ninth hour, the shared identity of the people is entirely severed. Let's dive into that first hour, because this is where Ilyan really observes the immediate, crushing internal despair of the citizens. The very foundational structures of their daily lives are just evaporating into thin air. Imagine being a clerk, opening your official census book, and the ink that denotes districts and family allegiances literally blurs into unreadable smoke right in front of your eyes. Or imagine being a soldier. You can remember your mother's face, you can remember the taste of the bread you had for breakfast, but the very oath that makes you a soldier of Ervath, it vanishes from your mind completely. You don't know why you're holding a spear. Out in the city markets, coins stamped with the royal seal suddenly feel like worthless foreign metal in people's hands, backed by absolutely no authority. And perhaps the most devastating detail of all, men who have spent 20 years proudly collecting taxes for the crown suddenly feel a profound, overwhelming sense of shame. They stare down at the coins on their desks, and they feel exactly like thieves. The societal agreement, the very trust that holds people together, is just dissolving in real time. As we hit the fourth hour, the very geography of the world begins to reject Ervath. Maps literally curl inward on themselves, and the name of the nation disappears from every single surface. Knowing what's happening, Ilyan sprints to the royal archives, desperately hoping that something, anything, can be saved.
But what he witnesses there is just heartbreaking. He finds these dedicated monks, frantically trying to hand copy the royal histories before they vanish. They are writing as fast as humanly possible, but as Ilyan watches, the ink actively peels away from the parchment. It literally scurries off the pages like frightened insects. Some pages manage to survive, but only as vague, disjointed stories with no dates or biographies of rulers who seemingly never had a throne. It is a frantic, incredibly tragic, and ultimately doomed struggle. These monks are trying to save a history that is actively, aggressively refusing to exist. During this chaos in the archives, one of the desperately copying monks turns to Ilyan. His hands are completely stained with this vanishing ink, and he asks Ilyan, pleading, if prayer could somehow stop this nightmare. Ilyan's response reveals the cold, terrifying truth of the situation they are in. Ilyan knows that, sure, prayer might protect a human soul in the afterlife, but the destruction of Ervath's history, that cannot be stopped by faith. This isn't some divine spiritual test. It is a calculated metaphysical execution by an offended higher power. A severe political insult was dealt to a king of the abyss, and a systemic punishment is now being carried out with flawless, completely unstoppable logic. Then, the 6th hour arrives, and the power dynamic profoundly shifts. Remember those minor, low-ranked demons that the human officials had so arrogantly relied upon? The ones they thought gave them an edge? They completely abandon the humans. And it's crucial to understand, they don't do this out of cruelty or malice. They do it out of sheer survival. Magical contracts burn from the inside out. Hidden idols crack open, and inside, there's nothing but dead moths. Belial doesn't even have to lift a finger or command them to flee. His mere presence in the city clarifies the true hierarchy of the unseen world. As the realization sets in for these lesser spirits, it's like the old saying, a candle might boast when it's in the darkness, but it does not negotiate with the sun. The arrogant human officials are left utterly, completely alone. By the time the 9th hour rolls around, Ervath is a place without a nation. And here, we witness a despair that is arguably far, far greater than any physical destruction could cause. Out of the western frontier, the border guards are taking off their badges and just sitting beside the dirt road, openly weeping. And you have to understand, they aren't weeping because they are physically injured. They aren't crying because their homes are burning down. Because the buildings still stand, the people are still breathing. They are weeping because they are watching the massive border stones physically lose their carvings, smoothing out into blank rock. And they suddenly feel a lifetime of loyal service losing its object. To serve nothing, to have your entire identity hollowed out from the inside while you are still alive. That is a sorrow far worse than a defeat on a battlefield. As the day nears the 12th hour, the final hour of the erasure, Ilyan faces a really profound internal struggle. He has watched an entire nation be systematically removed from the meaning of the world. He carries these heavy gifts of demons within him, powers that urge him not to fight, not to attack, but simply to witness. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. How do you stand before a power capable of massacring memory itself without completely surrendering your own judgment and just bowing down in blind, groveling terror? Ilyan knows deep in his bones that he has to confront Belial. Not as an equal, he's not delusional, but as a witness who flat out refuses to crawl. So, Ilyan goes to the river terrace. This is the exact place where the very first kings of Ervath swore their founding oaths. Oaths that are now, of course, just meaningless decorative patterns on the stone. He stands before the demon crown, and he holds on to his quiet, desperate dignity. He doesn't try to command Belial. He doesn't threaten him. He simply bears witness to a tragedy that mortal strength cannot stop.
He looks at Belial and tells him that while the guilty in that council room offended him, the innocent citizens did not, and that history will call this what it is, a massacre. Belial simply smiles this faint, terrible smile, looks down with cold, chilling indifference, and replies, "No. History will struggle to remember what was erased. That is the lesson."
As the sun finally sets on the 12th hour, Chancellor Morrick Vale sits alone in an empty hall. He is a man with no title, no government, and absolutely no nation. Ervath has become a blank spot in the architecture of the world. Ilyan Marr manages to escape the silent, erased city, cementing his role as the ultimate, tragic historian of this event. As he walks away, he carries only 3 physical artifacts of a dead kingdom: a broken coin that no market in the world will ever recognize, a torn strip of a vanished flag that stirs sorrow without any identity attached to it, and the full, forgotten name of Ervath itself, held safely and secretly in the hidden council of his own mind. He, and he alone, has become the sole vessel of a murdered reality.
By the very next morning, the panic crosses international borders faster than any marching army ever could. The rest of the world awakens to the horrifying, undeniable realization of what high demons can truly do when provoked. Human rulers everywhere suddenly realize they are merely insects moving beneath the table where unseen giants argue over the laws of reality. And out there, somewhere in the dark spaces between the maps, Ilyan Marr carries the lost name. It's an incredible burden, because if he speaks it carelessly, he will just be called a madman or a liar, or worse, used as a political weapon. But if he stays completely silent, then Belial's terrifying lesson succeeds completely. And so, as we wrap up this explainer, we are left to ponder a deeply haunting question. What power does a lone witness actually hold? When history is entirely erased by an absolute, unstoppable power, does the simple, quiet act of remembering become the ultimate rebellion?